Hi there, it's Skyward Shield. Welcome to Football Talks. Although it's not the podcast that you're used to, what I am doing is something a bit new to the channel. For now, I'm going to call it the Weekly Power Poll. If I could come up with a better name that's a little more original, I will do so in the future. But for now, this is a bit of an experiment for the channel because I've been thinking I want to try and expand into something else. I want to try and expand into football because over the past few years, I've been getting more and more invested in the league and the ins and outs and all that stuff. But I find power rankings to be fun because at the end of the day, it's my own opinion. I'm not perfect on any of these, but let's be fair, nobody is. It's really hard to make an objective list, especially when you have certain teams all that deserve to be in, say, one single spot because that fits. Anyway, I don't have a template for it yet, so I'm using the USA Today fan-created version. I hopefully will have that ready within the next couple of weeks. I have to have somebody help me set it up, but it won't be complicated. Anyway, so let's get right into it. Let's start from the bottom up. Now, of course, you could already see all the teams for this situation, but I think you can understand why. We're not going to talk about every single team, obviously. I don't want to spend an hour talking about why this team's here. Maybe it could be higher and lower and all that stuff, but no. We're just going to highlight teams that I feel deserve to be talked about, especially if they might be considered controversial or surprising, or well-deserved. We'll see. So let's look at the bottom four, obviously. Um, Numbers 25 to 32, I consider the utmost bottom tier. These teams might virtually be out of the playoff hunt, and they're just playing for a high draft pick at this point. And I know this sounds very early to say, but let's be real. These 0-4 teams, it is very unlikely that any of them could go in. However, two of them are going to play each other right now, and you're going to see a lot. There's a lot of tanking games this week. I don't know if you've noticed for week 5 or going into week 5. What you're seeing, like for example, the Chargers are going to play the Giants, both winless. I called that on the podcast. The Jets, I believe, are going to play the Browns, and the Colts are going to play the 49ers. So it'll be interesting to see how these bad teams just struggle against each other. A lot of tank bulls. But the one I'm going to highlight right now is probably the Giants because it feels like they're overdue for a win. I think they're going to beat the Chargers because I'm of the belief the Chargers are the only reason they're above the Browns is because they can put up points. Phillip Rivers is still a solid quarterback. It's just his supporting cast is not that good. Even especially when you go into, say, defense. But the Giants, I feel like the free agency honeymoon with their defense has been fading. Sure, the talent's there, but something feels wrong. However, the real reason they're not doing so well, if you ask me, is offensive line issues and the lack of a running game. However, with all that said, I would think out of all four of these teams, the first one to get a win, because now technically one of them has to. The Giants or the Chargers have to get a win, most likely. I'm going to go with this team, the Giants, because Odell Beckham will have to carry them, but this defense, I feel I might trust it a little bit more than the Chargers. But I wouldn't be surprised if the other team choked, if the other teams just kept choking to each other to the point of overtime, and it may end in like a last-minute field goal. I don't know. This one's going to be interesting for the bad reasons. Another team I want to highlight is the Chicago Bears. They're at 26 on here. You know, they're not that far off from getting into the third tier, as I like to call it, tier 3. But the only reason I think they're of interest is because they've had nearly a fortnight to prepare for their Monday Night Football game against the now vulnerable Minnesota Vikings, who are at 18. Basically, depending on how the Bears are and how the Vikings are next week, or this week, they could, at a most extreme situation, switch spots because the Bears are starting Mitch Trubisky. He has a lot of time to prepare, and to top that off, he does have some good of a supporting cast. He has a decent enough offensive line and a running game. The Vikings just lost all of their running game, with Dalvin Cook out for the year with the torn ACL. Their defense is still legit. In my opinion, half the reason I think the Vikings are still, within odds of maybe making a playoff push, is the fact Sam Bradford should come back eventually, and they have perhaps the best defense in the NFC, if you ask me. But right now, the Bears are interesting because if Mitch Trubisky shows promise, like another rookie quarterback has been showing so far that I'm going to talk about later, they could spike up and be, I don't know, I'd say a playoff contender, but at least they'll be frisky. And I think that's what the Bears want to do, especially if they want if the front office wants to keep their heads. Now, on that note, you might notice a surprise. A team that's barely on the edge, are barely looking into Tier 2. The Dallas Cowboys they just got screwed out of it. I dropped them a lot because, look, I was expecting the Cowboys to be, I want to say 2-3, because if you saw my podcast predicting their schedule, I had them overall going 9-7, taking a step back. But I think around here I expected them to lose to the Packers, which they're about to play this week, and the Broncos. So they were going to be 3-2. They might actually be worse, a little worse than I thought, because their defense. I know people after week 1, people said the Cowboys are Super Bowl contenders. They look amazing. Nothing can get in their way. But, however, I have to disagree because I've been saying that secondary is too young, and you get a good quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. No, and like Rob Marinelli cannot mask the defense forever. I don't know why the Cowboys don't get in their head. Mind you, they did draft well this year. They got a lot of defensive pieces, but they're just too young, and that's the recipe for disaster this week. I put them here. I don't know if depending on how bad they may lose, I could drop them just a few spots or by a lot of spots. And to top it off, I've been saying their defense was the reason they lost, or are going to lose their games this year. But their offense is not keeping up. It is not doing what it's expected to do because that offensive line is not as good as it used to be. Doug Free retiring and Ronald Leary going to the Broncos because the Cowboys could never pay anybody in the offseason last season. Is like you're seeing the downsides of free agency. Free agency typically should never ruin a team, but in the Cowboys' case, you're seeing it because they could not pay for anybody because that old habit of Jerry Jones overpays his favorite players. This is where it comes back to bite them in the ass. That extra money that you give to your players to stay, you may have needed that to sign another guy who may not. Sure, they may not be as important as, say, Des Bryant, but they still had an impact on the team that is going to be missed for a while. Now then, let's go over to the other side. I could talk about the Titans. They were the darling team of everybody's eyes. I said the Texans would beat them. I didn't expect a spanking like that. I did not expect the Titans to be sent to the Shadow Realm the way they did, but here they are. I did not think they were going to tank this hard, but I think some people have them higher than this. I think I've seen the highest is 14, but the lowest I've seen maybe is 18. I think 16's like the Prime Meridian. They are the Prime Meridian team because their run game is still good. The Texans game planned for that hard, basically forcing Mariota to have to beat them. In this case, the only touchdowns they got was because they ran it. And speaking of Mariota, he's out. He may not start against the Dolphins game. He is practicing, but it's day-to-day. I don't think he'll start. I don't think the Titans want to take a chance. They may just say bite the bullet because you may only need 9 wins to get this division crown. And you have another shot playing against the Texans. You still got to have what I assume is 2 easy wins against the Colts, and you get the Jaguars eventually in your house. So, at least in terms of divisional matchups, you still have you still have a bit of the edge on your side. With all that said, their defense has been exposed, and other teams are going to be looking to highlight that. Now, next are the team above them. This may be considered a bit too high for some. The Saints. The Saints started out horrible out of the gate. Their defense, which was expected to be pretty good, not top 10 by any means, but at least around here, and they've shown up. It took a while, but first they shut down the Panthers at their own place, and then they went to Wembley Stadium in London and just shut out the Dolphins, which that's why the Dolphins are so low. If you saw earlier. But Drew Brees is playing good. He hasn't thrown an interception, which that surprised me when I checked his stats. Like, what? I thought he threw an interception already. I figured he threw it in week 1 or week 2, but I guess I wasn't paying attention hard enough. But here they are. They could very well drop again. I think they're just here as a bit of a precaution, and to be honest, I think they're better than most of the other teams right now. Because Drew Brees is playing like he always is. He's a great quarterback still. But we'll have to wait and see. Seahawks are down there because, sure, they laid the smack down on the Colts, but really, if they want to get back in the top 10, they need to win this game. It may not need to be convincing. It could be just a last-second field goal, but they need to win. They need the win here if they want to stay in contention for their division. Wild card, and they could be in their hopes still, but we don't know about that. But the one team I want to talk about from Tier 2, the one who was low for many power ranking people, the Texans. I think their team's the perfect spot because it's high enough, but it's nothing. You don't crack the top 10, and you don't go past the Patriots because you didn't beat them, which that logic may sound contradictory after I talk about the next teams or two or so. But Deshaun Watson looked amazing. We don't know what's going to happen because they play the number 1 team on my rankings, the Chiefs, this week. I'm calling an upset of the week. I don't know. We don't know. We have to wait and see for that. But especially as long as he can hang with the Chiefs, even if they lose, I don't see how this team has all of a sudden looked like the favorites. Because if you told me after week 1 that when Watson would go play the Titans, he'd drop a near 60 burger on them, I would have scoffed. I think everybody would have scoffed because it's a rookie quarterback. If you put Drew Brees here and said, "Oh, he's going to do that," I would have believed you. It's like, "Oh yeah, he could do that," but not here. Anyway, the Texans team is perhaps the most interesting team to watch aside from the Saints because depending on how they do against the Chiefs, they could still move up in my rankings. I know there are no moral victories in this league, but if they can hang with a true Super Bowl contender, look out. This team may be a dark horse in the race in the long run, but we have to wait and see. Next team to talk about now, we're starting to get into the top 10. The Panthers, for beating the Patriots, they've jumped up, and they've cracked the top 10. I'm still suspicious because their defense has been a Jekyll and Hyde. The first half, it looked dominant. For the first 2 weeks, it was actually the number 1 defense. But then the Saints cracked them open. And then I know people say it was a great team victory for the Panthers, but look. The Patriots on offense are not the problem. Tom Brady has thrown 10 touchdowns, no interceptions. He's playing like a god. And yet, his defense is putting him in these situations where he can't win unless he got the ball last. It's the reason why, to me, the Panthers won is because they got the ball last. If there was time on the clock, the Patriots might have worked their magic again, but I don't know. The Panthers' defense is skeptical to me. I need to see a good defensive performance like I did in the first 2 weeks because without that, I don't see them going anywhere. I don't see them going to the Super Bowl. They could maybe win their division because the Bucks, which was going to be my darling team, has disappointed me so far. Even if they are 2-1, their defense is skeptical. And then the Falcons, who were everyone else's darling team, just got blown out by the Bills, which I will mention that in a moment. But right above them, the Rams. I know I contradicted myself when I said the Patriots should be above the Texans because they beat the Texans. But why are the Rams above the Washington football team when Washington beat them? It's because, to me, Washington just lost some major pieces. They lost Josh Norman for a month or two, most likely. And that hurts. The secondary was pretty good, and this is going to hurt them. I don't know if it's going to drop their defense too much, but at the very least, they may give up an extra big play or two, which is going to be a problem. We'll see how that turns out, but the Rams have a big statement game against their rival. They have the Seahawks at home. They could bring in a crowd this time. For once, that Coliseum may be filled. Maybe not entirely, but this Rams team is exciting. In fact, I think they are the most exciting team in the NFC. If they beat the Seahawks, all of a sudden, it's them and another NFC team that are the possible Super Bowl favorites. It's hard to say. The Seahawks looked a lot better. It looked like the Seahawks got better against the bad Colts team, but now they're going to play a real team. Anyway, Next up, the Falcons and Bills. This game was a lot better than you thought, and wow, Buffalo looks frisky. Buffalo's run game is okay. I don't think it's the best. I can think of maybe two more run games that are better than them, because LaShawn McCoy can't do it all on his own. And even so, he's had a few shaky plays. But despite that, this defense for Buffalo is playing amazing. And then this week against the Bengals, they're getting their first round pick, Reggie Ragland, who was out last year. He's coming back. He's going to line up with the rest of that team. Scary. It looks scarier now. The Bills can easily become 4-1 and start having a lead in this division. To me, it's a matter of how long they have it. I still believe in New England to pull it through, but we'll have to wait and see. We'll find out. And of course, the top four. Now, I think it's going to be a little questionable because some people might think the Falcons should be up there, but I think no. The Falcons looked bad, and they're on a bye week, and I wanted to put them at a spot where it's not that likely where they'll get affected because the Steelers, I have a feeling they may just scrape by with the win against the Jags because they play to their opponent's level most of the time. But unless they make a statement, I don't see them moving up. Maybe the Rams could move up, but I put the Falcons in a spot where I think they are not as likely to get affected. Maybe I should have put them higher, but I did not think any of these other teams needed to go lower. Another team, a sneaky AFC dark horse, I guess you could say literally a dark horse, the Denver Broncos. They look a lot better. They got better against the Raiders, which, to be fair, the Raiders did not look good that game either. But I think the Broncos can easily get in the playoffs as long as they win every single home game, because to me, that place is one of the most dangerous stadiums to play in, second only to Arrowhead with the Chiefs. But the Broncos haven't had a lot of trouble at home, which is surprising. Even the Chiefs, how as great as they've been playing, who are at number one, which this is my only real mention of them, they've had struggles at home. They kept the Eagles in it. Washington stayed in the game. So I'm not saying that the Chiefs are in trouble at home. I'm just saying they haven't had the easiest road, and they've shown they can overcome diversity. Or adversity, my bad, not diversity. They've overcome adversity. But right now, the Broncos and Chiefs look like they're just going to meet head on, and we're going to see the situation of an immovable object versus an unstoppable force, and it's going to be amazing. But the other team, this team, is starting to get acknowledged by some other analysts, but they're still being dismissed. The Detroit Lions, 3-1. Sure, you could say the offense isn't playing as good as they usually are, but you know what? I'll be damned to say that if the people tell me that the defense has been fluky. The turnover differential has been amazing. Sure, you could say some of them were caused by the quarterback making some mistakes or tip balls, but this defense has been playing for real. I believe it's fourth in points allowed. They contained the Vikings. They've contained the Giants, which you could say that the Giants weren't a good team, but the Vikings, I don't care what anybody says, that Vikings team, even though I have it so low in my power rankings, I wouldn't be surprised if they got back in the top 15 this week if they could pull it off against the Bears. I think the Bears will win, but the Vikings, once Sam Bradford comes back, it's going to be, the passing game will be predictable, but it should still be effective. But we'll see about that. But the Detroit Lions look better than the Packers, and I cannot wait for their Monday Night Football matchup later in the year. Because if the Lions could beat the Packers and keep on winning their division games, oh boy, I would be excited as a Detroit fan. If you're a Detroit Lions fan, I would start getting on this bandwagon now than later, because I feel good about this team. I think this team, I need to see some better offense, but they could very well take the number one spot if the Chiefs get exposed just once. Like, the lion is literally waiting for its opportunity to pounce. Now, it needs to beat the Panthers this week in a catfight, but if they beat the Panthers, I don't want to hear a single pundit start telling me, oh, it was nothing, because you can't keep using that argument against these guys. First, you said, oh, the Giants aren't really good this year, even though they were a playoff team. First, they said, beat a playoff team, so they did. Oh, they weren't a real playoff team anymore. Okay, then say, beat a team with a winning record on the road. Okay, so they beat the Vikings. Oh, but the Vikings weren't 100%. Yeah, they did. They had Dalvin Cook, and Case Keenum didn't have a bad game. I don't think he turned over the ball. I think the fumbles are caused by other players. Which is surprising, because Case Keenum just suddenly got better over there. It's like the Vikings are a QB-friendly team. But okay, guys, sure, whatever. What else do we need to do? The Lions are like, what else do we need to do to prove that we're a good team? We are beating these teams that you keep telling us that we need to beat, but you still keep dismissing us. Thank God that these analysts are acknowledging it, but there are still plenty of pundits who doubt Detroit, and I understand why, but this week of games feels so important already. Even if there's a lot of tank bull tier games on the bottom of the list, there are still some key matchups to watch, and I'll give you 5 that are important right now. You have the Rams and the Seahawks, the Texans and the Chiefs, Pittsburgh and the Jaguars. Yes, I know that sounds hard to believe, but the Jags could still very well turn this around. As long they could be carried by their defense. They could be like the Giants last year, where the defense did all the work. But if Pittsburgh can handle it, it shows that they can be good. But remember, they're better at home than they are on the road. That's something to note. The Cowboys Cowboys hosting the Packers, I should say, because if the Cowboys cannot beat the Packers, they may very well let the Eagles run away with the division. But if the Packers lose to the Cowboys and the Lions win against the Panthers, well, they can run away with the division as well. And the last game, which I think this one's a bit of a surprise too. Well, it is now. It wouldn't have been a month ago when we were just thinking about how these teams would do. Patriots at the Bucks. Because if the Patriots lose this one, oh god, they're in deep shit, especially if the Buffalo Bills win their next game, which, in my opinion, they're heavy favorites. But should the Bucks lose, it gives the Panthers and the Falcons more leeway. Either way, it'll be an interesting week of games. I know you may not all agree with all these games, or with this results, I should say, with these rankings. Feel free to disagree. Tell me if you think this team should be higher, this team should be lower, or if you agree with some spots, like saying, oh, I like where the Lions are, or I like where the Jets are. Go ahead and put it in the comment section below. I don't mind. I don't mind starting a discussion. The discussion is fine. Just please don't be a dick about it. There's nothing wrong with saying, I disagree because this reason, or it's like, I disagree, you're terrible, go fucking kill yourself, whatever. We're not here for that. We're just here to have a fun discussion, because at the end of the day, all these rankings in general, are subjective. Please keep that in mind, and next time I'll see you guys after Week 5, so we can see where these teams have moved up and down the rankings. I'll see you guys next week.